Welcome everybody to Somewhere in Vegas here on our new home, Spreaker.com. I am Mark with a Q. I am your host. This past weekend I had the unique opportunity to cover Victoria's Voice Shine a Light benefit at the Westgate here in Las Vegas. I was at the media lunch where licensed social workers, advocates, and former addicts talked about the problems and strides as they work on helping treating mental illness and addiction. We were able to catch up with two of the panelists at this media lunch. First, I talked to Ken Seeley, who is a series regular on A&E's hit show Intervention. Having worked with many families suffering from addiction, we get his insights on the crisis, his opinions on possible solutions, and why the show has impacted so many viewers. It's interesting that the fact that the show is very, very popular. How many seasons? We would have to be over like 10 or 12 seasons right now in Intervention. Why do you think that the show is so popular right now? And does it really strike home for a lot of people?
Yeah, it just hit 15 years this year.
Yeah.
Picked up for 15 years, started in 2004. And I think the reason why so many people relate to it is because it hits all walks of life. Everybody is affected by this disease. Everybody knows somebody that, no matter if you're rich, poor, black, white, it doesn't matter. It hits all walks of life, and everybody knows somebody. So I think that's really why it's been going for so many years, and people are still intrigued in watching the devastation that it puts the families through and the pain. That's what breaks my heart.
Yeah, it used to be the thing is that it's a big city problem. There's, drugs rampant in big cities, not the small towns. And it seems like intervention kind of really does focus a little bit more on some of the smaller towns and some of the families that are affected there. How's it been for you to try to, for the show and the show itself to kind of, highlight the fact that this is not just a big city problem, it's happening in smaller towns as well?
It hits all walks of life. I'm from Canada to U.S., all over Europe. It hits everyone. And I think that's really the reason why so many people are still tuning in. It doesn't matter. It's small little towns. That's where people are dropping dead because they don't have the education around it. And that's what I like about this event today and Dionne Warwick talking about, it's really the education. And these small towns aren't getting that education. They're not seeing the devastation of it and how to prevent this. They're only going to the big cities, like you said. The big cities are the ones that are getting all the education and the attention. But it's those small towns that don't have the tools necessary to fight back from this addiction.
And it's not just, it also not just the rich, not just the poor. And it's not, everybody from all different walks of life that you probably have seen that have had these problems as well. There's no necessarily a common thread besides the fact that there's addiction and there might be some kind of trauma related with that. How's it been for you to kind of see all these different kind of stories and the idea that maybe one type of therapy isn't tailored for everybody? You guys talk about a tailored approach, a targeted approach to different types of people. But talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I love that question because I've dealt with trauma in my life, and I've done EMDR, and that didn't work for me. And I've done trauma eggs and trauma experiential groups, and that worked for me. But that doesn't mean that EMDR isn't going to work for you or somebody else. So the reality is we have to have a spectrum of modalities to be able to let people feel where they connect to deal with their trauma, so now that they could connect to another human being. Because that's the missing link, is the trauma puts a wall up to protect ourselves, and they can't connect. So what modality is going to get that person to connect? And it may be a completely different modality for each and every person going through this.
Yeah, this event, to have people from all different walks of life, from former addicts to the therapy, the counselors that are there, to people that have been affected by either directly or indirectly by the idea of addiction and mental illness and suicides. I mean, what's it mean to be here and try to exchange ideas and look towards the future of what therapies and what options they have in terms of getting better and helping recover?
Well, I think the biggest part is, like you said, multi-billionaires are in the room. I mean, people that, it's all walks of life. And what it takes is all of us to come together. All of us come together. And I love the idea of having this song and having one common place where everybody knows that, okay, we need to do something about this. Because if you look at 9/11 and look at the billions of dollars that tragedy raised for 9/11, and you look at the addiction industry, that every 3 weeks, the same amount of people are dying every 3 weeks for the last 4 years. 4 years, every single day, people are dying, 200 a day. And so the amount of people that are dying every day is completely way a lot more than it's ever been. So to have that many people getting killed from this disease and having all these people, like I said up on the panel, it's going to take the celebrities and it's going to take the media and it's going to take the artists to come together to get that message out there.
This isn't going to be a problem that's going to be able to be fixed in a year or 2 years or 3 years, all that as well. I mean, just looking at what we're looking at now, I mean, what are some of the hurdles that you guys are running through, and what are some of the things that are really kind of working towards the benefit of solving some of these problems and helping people to be able to recover?
Well, I think that the stumbling blocks are the general public doesn't believe in treatment anymore. They're tired of sending their loved one to treatment 10 times and it's not working. But I think where we're all starting to come together and where the common message is what is working, I know Dr. Barthwell talked about it on the panel, is that it's about accountability after treatment. Treatment works when they're there. But when you send them home and you don't continue the treatment, that's when they relapse and die. So I think everybody's getting on the page that treatment isn't for 30, 60, 90 days. Treatment is really for 3 to 5 years. And that's the key. We need to put it in everybody's brain that this is a brain disease and it's going to take 3 to 5 years to really recover from this, like cancer. They have the 5-year survival rate. 5-year survival rate, you get past 5 years, you're going to be remission-free pretty much.
Yeah, now, they also talk about the idea that having family involved helps a lot in terms of that as well. Intervention is one of those situations where you get the families involved and they say, hey, we love you, we want to support you, we want you to get better. How's that for you in terms of, kind of seeing that and the successes that you've seen through the show when the family is involved?
Well, they always say, what is the percentage? The percentages raise, as they talked about on the panel, the percentages raise 50 to 60% higher if you get the family on board to do the right things. If you get them to do the right things. So I always like to use, I love Damon that brought up his cousin's, disease and how it killed her, right? Whitney Houston, his cousin. I think, I remember reading, I never worked with her, I never worked with the family. I wish I would have known him then because I could have really possibly helped in a way. Because when the interventionist said to Whitney's mother, bring in the court papers that you're going to take away her daughter, or she goes to treatment. Do you remember that back in the day?
Yeah.
So, because her mother was only educated that it was to get her into treatment, she held the court papers, and what did Whitney do? Directly to treatment. But because it wasn't for long term, when she got out, she relapsed. And it has to be long-term, like the doctors and the lawyers and the pilots. It's long-term. And if mom would have been able to use that for long-term, instead of saying, you're going to be randomly drug tested, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to follow a protocol after treatment too. And when I work with families that understand that, that's the missing link in why so many are dying.
Yeah, and I mean, there is, it's not just the person that you're treating, also, you're treating the family. Mm-hmm. And the idea of them, kind of coping with something. It might, the trigger might have been something that happened within the family, or it could be just something that triggered them, but still, they have to understand why this person has gotten addiction. So, I mean, that aspect of it, I think, is very interesting. The fact that's got to be something that's got to be pressed a little bit harder.
Yes, because, when I did my last intervention, it was interesting. One of the spouses called me, right, and said, I need help with my spouse to get it into treatment. So I said, okay, here I come. I'll come do the intervention. When I got there and I did the pre-intervention, I found out he also had addiction problems. And so it isn't really just, his weren't as magnified or as devastating because he was still the provider and still caregiver for the family system, but his was just as bad. And in my opinion, I think it might have been worse. Hers was just so devastating that hers took it to the level where, going into psychosis and behaviors like that. So hers escalated to such a faster way of identifying it that's why everybody ran to help her. But when I looked at the big picture, his was worse than hers. So he had the disease also. And treating the family and saying, no, not just you are going to treatment, you're going to go to treatment too. And we're going to make sure that the family that's been turning the blind eye for all these years is going to get codependent treatment. And they're going to work their steps with their sponsors and do what's necessary to help them understand the new language of recovery.
Anything else? Anything coming up for you, in the coming months?
Yeah, we're doing intervention trainings. We're helping people to learn how to do intervention trainings, long-term care. The new season of intervention was picked up recently, so we're really excited that A&E picked up another season. So
I should also mention that Viceland has picked up the old episodes as well. So if you guys go to Viceland as well, you'll be able to see some of the older episodes. So that's great to be able to hear that as well. Where can they follow you on social media?
Social media is on Facebook. I have Ken Seeley Facebook. I have Intervention 911. On Intervention 911, I'm doing a lot more live interviews and helping people that have problems and inviting them in to talk about their problems on Facebook Live. So I've been doing that on Instagram. I don't even know them all. Instagram, it's Ken Seeley I911. So, just contact me anytime. I'd love to help you if you're suffering.
Okay, thank you. And I mean, it's been very educational being able to talk to you.
Thank you.
After the break, we will talk to Flipper Flop's Steve Cederquist. Steve Cederquist is best known for his work on HGTV's hit show Flipper Flop. He recently started talking about his addiction recovery. We talked about the processes and his hurdles in recovery, as well as the real estate market here in Las Vegas and his future projects. Tell me a little bit, I mean, obviously this is a really great event coming on this weekend right now, talking a little bit about addiction and mental health as well. I mean, how did you get involved in this? And tell me a little bit about your experiences.
I'm an addict, and it took me to some really dark levels in my life when I was younger, in my 20s. And actually took me, I lost everything. I ended up losing my freedom. I lost, I got involved with the gangs. I got involved with those were horrible things. And I was just, what I relate to this is like, this talk tonight was about how there's no education. I remember being locked up, and I remember them telling me, we hope you come back because it's job security for us. And it's just what we're doing with these youths, and we're doing with these people in general. We're just telling them, we don't want to talk about it. Basically, it's your problem, figure it out. And it's just unfortunate that, that we're doing that. So I'm glad that we're bringing attention to it.
Yeah, I mean, especially now in the information age right now, where, if we say, to any kid, find out for yourself, well, half the time they're going to look up on the internet, and half the time that thing's going to be wrong.